The meeting was unlike any other Cole Everett had attended during his deployment. The tent, dimly lit by alien bioluminescent orbs, was filled with tension. The Ikari king, a towering figure with chitinous armor-like skin and piercing silver eyes, studied Cole with an inscrutable expression. To the king, honor was everything, and tonight's gesture was meant to seal a bond of respect between his people and humanity. "You saved my son," the king began in a deep, guttural voice. "Without your bravery, he would have perished. The Ikari do not forget such debts." Cole, standing at attention, felt the weight of the king's words. Months ago, during a chaotic firefight on the barren moon of Graxis, he'd risked his life to pull an injured Ikari prince from certain death. At the time, it hadn't mattered who or what he was saving, only that someone needed help. Now, the consequences of that act were presenting themselves in a way Cole couldn't have anticipated. The king gestured, and two figures stepped forward from the shadows. A slender Ikari woman and a small child, their features softer and less imposing than the warriors surrounding them, approached hesitantly. "This is Naya, a widow of our great war," the king continued. "Her mate fell in battle, leaving her and her child, Kewen, unprotected. In our culture, such a fate is dishonorable, a burden too great for one to bear alone." Cole's heart sank as the realization hit him. This was no mere gesture. This was a gift, a token of gratitude steeped in the Ikari's ancient traditions. Naya and Kyn were being offered to him, not as equals but as property. He opened his mouth to protest but quickly shut it again. The stern gazes of the Ikari warriors made it clear, refusing the king's offering would be an insult of the highest order. The fragile peace between their species, hard won after years of bloodshed, might not survive such a slight. "Your kindness and strength make you worthy of such a responsibility," the king added, his tone brooking no argument. Cole forced himself to meet Naya's eyes. There was no fear in her gaze, only a guarded defiance, as if daring him to prove himself unworthy of the role she was being thrust into. The child, Kyn, clung to her leg, his large, luminous eyes darting nervously between the humans and Ikari warriors. Swallowing his misgivings, Cole bowed his head. "I accept this honor," he said carefully, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. The king nodded, satisfied. "Then let it be known that the bond between our people is strengthened this day." As the meeting concluded, Cole found himself walking out of the tent with Naya and Kyn trailing silently behind him. The weight of their presence was as heavy as the responsibility he'd just shouldered. He didn't know how, but one thing was certain. He would find a way to protect them, not as possessions but as people. The journey back to the outpost was quiet, the atmosphere heavy with tension. Cole glanced over his shoulder at Naya and Kyn, who followed a few steps behind. Naya's posture was rigid, her gaze scanning their surroundings with the sharp awareness of someone accustomed to danger. Kyn, on the other hand, seemed curious despite his wariness, his wide eyes darting between the unfamiliar terrain and Cole's gear. Once they reached the base, the situation grew more complicated. Naya's presence drew stares from Cole's fellow soldiers, and though no one said anything outright, the unspoken questions were palpable. Cole ignored them, focusing on settling Naya and Kyn into a spare quarters near his own. He could see the distrust in Naya's eyes as she took in the human environment. The first days were a struggle. Communication was difficult. Though the Ikari had a working knowledge of human languages, subtle differences in expression and tone often led to misunderstandings. When Cole offered food, Naya recoiled, insulted by his casual assumption she would accept charity. When he tried to explain the importance of rest, she responded with cold disdain, clearly viewing his concern as patronizing. Despite the friction, Cole persisted. He recognized that Naya's guarded behavior wasn't personal. It was a defense mechanism, born from a lifetime of war and loss. He gave her space, focusing instead on Kyn, who seemed less resistant to his presence. One evening, while on patrol outside the base, Cole noticed Kyn lingering nearby, his attention fixed on a small cluster of glowing insects. The boy's fascination was palpable, and Cole, sensing an opportunity, crouched down beside him. They're called fireflies, Cole said softly. Harmless little guys. Back on Earth, kids love catching them. KYN didn't respond but didn't pull away either. Encouraged, Cole demonstrated how to gently cup his hands around one of the insects, releasing it after a moment. To his surprise, KYN mimicked the motion, his expression lighting up when the firefly flickered in his palm. Naya observed from a distance, her expression unreadable. She didn't intervene, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor, as if Cole's interaction with KYN had given her pause. Over the next few days, small moments like these began to accumulate. Cole showed KYN how to use basic survival tools, like a multi-purpose knife and a portable purifier. KYN, in turn, shared snippets of Ikari culture, pointing out constellations in the sky that Cole had never noticed before. Naya remained wary, but her sharp remarks softened into measured conversations. During one such exchange, she reluctantly admitted her people's view of humans as naive and overly emotional. And yet, she added, almost begrudgingly, you risked your life for someone who wasn't your own. That is unexpected. It wasn't about who he was, Cole replied simply. It was about doing the right thing. Naya didn't respond, but her silence spoke volumes. Trust wasn't something that could be built overnight, but the foundation was beginning to take shape. Smoke filled the air as the last of the rebel attackers fell back, their retreat marked by hurried footsteps and the faint hum of stolen Ikari hovercraft engines. Cole, still gripping his rifle, scanned the area for any stragglers, his body tense and his injured shoulder throbbing. The immediate danger had passed, but the cost of their survival lingered in every corner of the damaged base. Naya leaned against a nearby wall, her chest heaving from exertion. She wiped the serrated blade clean with practiced efficiency, her movements sharp and deliberate. KYN stayed close to her, clutching a smaller version of a Ikari weapon he had picked up during the fight. His wide eyes betrayed a mix of fear and pride, the adrenaline of his first battle still coursing through him. We can't stay here, Naya said, her voice cutting through the silence. They'll regroup. Next time they won't fail. Cole nodded, already considering their next move. The base was compromised, and the rebels knew their location. Staying would only endanger everyone else stationed there. He keyed his comms to issue a retreat order, ensuring the remaining soldiers would evacuate to a fallback point. Where do we go? KYN asked quietly, his voice trembling despite his effort to sound brave. Cole knelt down, meeting the boy's gaze. We find a safer place. Somewhere they can't follow us. Naya observed the exchange silently, her expression unreadable. Cole's words carried a certainty she hadn't expected, a sense of responsibility that went beyond obligation. He wasn't just protecting them because he had to, he truly believed it was the right thing to do. The journey away from the base was grueling. Moving under cover of night, they traversed rough terrain, avoiding open areas where the rebels might spot them. Naya took the lead, her knowledge of the landscape guiding their path. Cole stayed close to KYN, ensuring the boy didn't fall behind. Despite his injury, he pushed forward, his determination driving him beyond his physical limits. As they reached a secluded ridge overlooking a dense forest, Naya called for a brief halt. The group needed rest, even if only for a few moments. KYN sat down beside Cole, his small frame visibly sagging from exhaustion. Back there, I was scared, KYN admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Everyone gets scared, Cole replied. Even soldiers. It's what you do with that fear that matters. KYN looked up at him, searching for reassurance. You weren't scared? Cole smiled faintly. I was, but I knew I couldn't let anything happen to you or your mom. That's what kept me going. Naya, overhearing the exchange, glanced at Cole. For the first time, there was no trace of distrust in her eyes, only a grudging respect. He had proven himself in ways she hadn't expected, not just as a fighter, but as someone who could be relied upon. The moment was brief, but it marked a turning point. They weren't just three individuals forced together by circumstance anymore. They were beginning to function as a team, each one willing to protect the others no matter the cost. The forest was dense, the canopy above shielding them from the twin moon's light. The trio moved cautiously, the silence broken only by the crunch of leaves underfoot. Hours had passed since they left the base, and the adrenaline of the battle was finally giving way to exhaustion. Cole's injured shoulder ached with every step, but he refused to slow down. He kept an eye on Naya, who had taken point, her blade ready in case of an ambush. HFY walked between them, his small figure dwarfed by the towering alien trees. Despite his fatigue, the boy's sharp gaze darted around, a testament to the instincts he had inherited from his mother. Eventually, they reached a small clearing. Naya paused, scanning the area with a warrior's precision before nodding. "We rest here," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. Cole lowered himself to the ground with a grimace, the pain in his shoulder finally forcing him to address the wound. Naya noticed and approached, her expression softening slightly. Without a word, she took out a small vial of Ikari healing salve from her pack. "Let me," she said, kneeling beside him. Cole hesitated, then nodded. She worked quickly, her hands steady as she applied the salve. The sting was sharp, but within moments, a soothing warmth spread through his shoulder. "You fight well," Naya said quietly, not looking up. "For someone who doesn't live for battle." Cole chuckled softly. "I don't fight because I love it. I fight because I have to." Naya met his eyes, something unspoken passing between them. "Perhaps that is why you survive," she said, her tone thoughtful. Nearby, HFY had begun to gather small stones, arranging them into patterns on the ground. He hummed a tune that was unfamiliar to Cole but clearly meaningful to the boy. Naya watched her son with a rare softness in her expression. "He is stronger than I thought," she said, almost to herself. "He's brave," Cole replied. "Takes after you." For the first time, Naya allowed herself a faint smile. "And perhaps now, he takes after you as well." The quiet moment was interrupted by a faint sound in the distance, the unmistakable hum of rebel hovercraft engines. Naya and Cole exchanged a glance, the brief respite giving way to renewed tension. "They're still hunting us," Naya said, her voice cold and determined. Cole stood, his rifle in hand. "Then we keep moving. We find somewhere they can't follow." As they prepared to leave, HFY looked up at them, his small face set with a seriousness far beyond his years. "We'll be okay," he said with quiet conviction. Cole ruffled the boy's hair, a rare moment of levity in the midst of their ordeal. "Yeah, kid. We will." Together, they vanished into the forest, a human soldier, a Ikari warrior, and a child caught between two worlds. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they had each other, and that was enough.